We are going live on this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. Penn State beats Delaware 63-7. Illinois, an absolute shambles. I'm liking the way the thing's set up for Penn State and Illinois. Let's discuss. We want to hear from you on a live Penn State postgame show for Locked On Nittany Lions.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That is right. You are Locked On Nittany Lions. Thanks so much for making us your first listen and watch every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Zach Seyko. We want to hear from you. Get your comments in the chat here on YouTube. And we're just going with the conversation here. We're going to talk Penn State, Delaware, preview Penn State, Illinois. Marty Leap coming over from Penn State Rivals. We're going to have Zane, Brancefield, contributor for Penn State Rivals, and Locked On Nittany Lions on the show as well. And of course, we want to hear from you. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more right now. New customers, take advantage of this. Bet $5, you get up to $200 in bonus bets back, guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. Marty, good to see you. First time we're doing a show together. Been working together for Penn State Rivals for a little bit. Thanks for coming on the show.
Glad to be here. Any excuse I get to talk about Penn State football, I will take it. So, happy to be here, man.
All right, appreciate it. And so, let's just start off with it. Okay, Penn State, Delaware. There's really no time to waste here. 63-7. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back here, but I spot on. If you watch the show, we knew that this game would go the way it would because Delaware's an FCS team. Penn State, for the first time in a couple of years, okay, yes, 2022, but thinking back to 2020 and 2021, where the ground game was just abysmal, and that's not something that Penn State, that's not the way they wanted to handle themselves. I get it. You went from 3 different offensive coordinators in 3 years. You went from Ricky Ronnie to Kirk Shiraka to then Mike Yursich. And now Mike Yursich just finally settled in, but you finally have this established ground game. And what I'm getting at is you can do this to opponents like Delaware, okay, where you can just say, hey, we're going to run it on first down. We're going to run it on second down. Heck, when it's 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, we're confident enough to still run the football. And that's a nice privilege for Penn State to have. So when you're winning games, you're going to run the football. So you anticipate that Penn State's going to be up by a lot. You now have a mobile quarterback in Bo Pribula. Not that Sean Clifford wasn't, and it's not that Drew Aller can't run. You saw it. He had a rushing touchdown today. He also had, I think he had about 25 yards on the ground, and they had quarterback design draws for him. But just factoring all of that in, Bo Pribula getting an increased amount of work when he is a run-first quarterback. They want to use his mobility. They want to scheme that in. It was easy for me to sit back and say that Penn State was going to have at least 300 yards as a team. Now, I could have said that Singleton and Allen would have had 100 each. Maybe Bo Pribula gets about 50 or so. But Trey Potts looked really good, and I just think that just wasn't fair. Trey Potts coming in at the end and playing against Delaware's backups. It really, that's just that was a man among boys. Okay, really, Trey Potts has been around college football for a long time at this point. But that's the game. That's the way the game unfolded. I thought that Penn State just was big brother here in this case. That they played press coverage a lot. Manny Diaz wasn't afraid to dial up the blitzes because there really wasn't that risk reward. It was just, okay, we can keep gambling and gambling and gambling because we know either Delaware is going to make a huge mistake or we're just going to get an incomplete pass out of this. And the pressure was just too much for Delaware to handle. You had the pick 6 from Dom DeLuca. So, and I didn't think Penn State would kick a field goal in this game because I thought red zone efficiency would be perfect because you're playing against Delaware. So here we are, 63-7 is the final. Marty, anything that was surprising? Everything was basically textbook for me, other than the fact that Penn State, I thought they would have had more turnovers, but I did say two. I thought it would be a fumble and interception. I got that part right, but I thought it was going to come from the secondary, not a pick six by freaking Dom DeLuca.
Yeah, no, I think it was when you're a program like Penn State and you're playing Delaware, this is about the best you can hope for, right? You came out, nobody got hurt. You had some injury scares with Keandre Lambert-Smith and Jalen Reed, but you're okay. They're gonna be okay. Nobody got hurt. You completely dominated. And this is what you look for if you're Penn State going against Delaware, is to just come out, dominate them. That's what they got. Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, Trey Potts, both really did not matter who's running the ball. They averaged over 5 yards per carry. Drew Aller continues to look like the guy at quarterback. And even on defense, last week against West Virginia, I know there was some uneasiness, or even call it a defensive line, but West Virginia's offensive line, other than Michigan, is the best offensive line they will face this year. And B, Penn State's D-line didn't play all that bad. So they came out today, they were disruptive. So, yeah, I think if you're Penn State, you're happy because you played an FCS opponent. You got out of it with a victory. You were dominant where you want to be dominant. You're injury-free. And ultimately, as a FBS program, especially a Power 5 program, you're going to take that every time against an FCS program. So, yeah, I think things went about as best as you could have hoped or expected, or whatever you want to put on it today for Penn State.
Yeah, I mean, and the conversation has to be about Drew Aller because I didn't have any questions about the ground game going into this. We know, I would say that maybe my stock is a little lower on Nicholas Singleton. I don't know if just today Katron Allen had a better week of practice going into this. I feel like that's what James Franklin judges a lot of these game plans on, is ride the hotter hand. Who is better in this week of preparation going into it? So one week you're going to have Katron Allen, another week for Nicholas Singleton. So I'm sitting back and I'm saying, okay, why didn't we get more than, I get it. Nicholas Singleton had the hat trick. He had 3 touchdowns. Kudos to him. That gets you a lot of fantasy points. Okay. It does. But I mean, Katron Allen seemed to be the bell cow with 19 carries, 103 yards, the 1 touchdown. It felt like Singleton was used pretty sparingly. It felt like even when Allen wasn't getting the football, he was getting a lot. He was just on the field much more so than Singleton was. And I'm sitting back and I'm like, okay, something wrong with Singleton? Are they just saving him? Because when I go to practice, he's always the first guy taking reps for the running backs. He's listed as the first. I know it's Singleton and Allen, but it's Singleton. Okay. Is there, before we get back to Drew Aller, because Drew's just probably, he has to be in the conversation now as one of the best quarterbacks in college football. And yes, I know you played West Virginia and I know you played Delaware, but it's the things you did against those two teams. But Marty, Nicholas Singleton, is your stock neutral with him? Are you in the slightest concern that maybe he's taken a step back? I just think it's an interesting conversation to have at this point, because in the first 2 games, you haven't seen that same explosiveness that he had towards the end of last year, and you figured he'd pick right back up on it.
Yeah, I can't say I'm concerned. I agree. You don't have the explosiveness you're looking for, but I think it's take today's game. Throw out the window. It's Delaware. They knew they could methodically drive up and down the field in Delaware and be okay. And against West Virginia, he didn't have maybe the explosiveness we saw last year, but Singleton still averaged 5 yards per carry against West Virginia. So it's not like he was bad,
Yeah.
So through 2 weeks, he's averaging like 4.5 yards per carry. He's got 5 touchdowns, I think. He had 12 carries today and scored 3 touchdowns. He'll be okay. Nicholas Singleton will be okay. I still would make an argument for Nicholas Singleton being the best running back in college football. He's going to be okay. I get where you're coming from, where I can see where some fans can be concerned because of lack of explosive plays, but you've played 2 games. You've played 2 inferior opponents. Against inferior opponents, you're going to put as little on film as possible. And I think that's a big factor too. So I think Penn State is trying to leave, for the Iowas, the Ohio States and Michigans, they want as little as possible in film. We've seen that as well. But yeah, I'm not worried about it. I think they'll be okay. I have no doubts if you get into a game where you need Nicholas Singleton to explode for a big play, it's there. It can be done. But I can't say I'm worried about Nick Singleton so far and the lack of explosive plays.
Yeah, and if you listen to James's post-game press conference as well, he can put it into perspective best in the fact of, okay, they truly believe that they have, and they know it, right? It's not this far-fetched belief. You have the reincarnation. Okay, I'll say it. You have the reincarnation of Lendell White and Reggie Bush from USC. Okay, that's just the way they are. They're thunder and lightning. It's a really good combination to have. Obviously, Katron relating more to Lendell, and Reggie Bush and Nicholas Singleton in that same conversation, just because of the way that their player profiles are. Okay, Katron Allen's going to be more that he is tough to bring down. It's not that Nicholas Singleton isn't, but Nicholas Singleton's going to hit you with the home run at any given time. I feel like Katron Allen does miss that extra step that Nicholas Singleton, we all know he has, and then some. But James Franklin said in the postgame presser that they like what they have at running back, mostly because the longevity. Okay, these guys aren't having to carry the football 20, 30, 40 times consistent touching the football. Remember, like the Saquon Barkley game against Iowa, where he touched the ball, 50 times? I know that's an exaggeration, but definitely north of 30. You don't have to do that anymore with Singleton. And I know that Barkley was capable of handling it. He still played a full season, but then you don't have to worry about, okay, what's, as James Franklin said, the tread on the tires. What is that going into the next game? What's that going into week 12? You have you have two cars in the garage, and you can drive them and not worry about the mileage going towards the end of the season. And he said that about just their careers in general. So I think that's the bigger picture here, but it's an important question to pose about Singleton through 2 weeks. It's just a little lackluster for him, but maybe because they're saving him.
Yeah, I think that's part of it too. Is you realize as a coaching staff, hey, we're going to beat West Virginia, we're going to beat Delaware. Let's save some tread for games that are we might lean on more. So I think that's a factor too. Like you said, you can win these without having to lean on Singleton. I definitely think that's a big factor because you mentioned Saquon Barkley. That Iowa game in 2017 where they had to lean on Saquon to win the game, and then you get to Michigan State, you get to Ohio State, and he was just burnt out. And, I will say one thing with this coaching staff, I think they do a great job, James Franklin does, of learning from past mistakes. I think we see that with the amount of playing time Drew Aller got last year and Bo Peep this year from the debacle in Iowa City in 2021 when they had to go take on Roberson. So I think that could be a factor too, where it's like, hey, you know what? This burned us in the past. Let's not let this happen again. So, but yeah, you're going to beat West Virginia and Delaware regardless. If that means Nicholas Singleton has less than stellar numbers and he saves a big explosive plays for Iowa, for Ohio State, for Michigan, I'm all for it because that's ultimately, if you're going to get where you want to get, those are the teams you're going to need those plays against anyway.
And we're looking for your comments on this live episode of Locked On Nittany Lions, recapping Penn State and Delaware, and then ultimately getting into the conversation about the Fighting Illini and the Nittany Lions. Marty, we're going to bring in Zane in just a moment to talk about Drew Aller's performance and what this means for Penn State. Before we get to that, let's hear from one of our sponsors of today's episode, and that is Athletic Brewing Company. They are the best when it comes to the non-alcoholic brewing. So it is time for your game changer for today's broadcast. And it's going to be Dom DeLuca, okay? Your game changer of the week is brought to you by Athletic Brewing Company. And Dom DeLuca gets it because of the pick six, especially because Dom DeLuca comes from the walk-on, turned captain to serious contributor on not only special teams, but the defense, as you saw today with the pick six. And Athletic Brewing, like Dom DeLuca, completely changed the game, changed the non-alcoholic beer game, that is. They make non-alcoholic beers that actually taste good. They make non-alcoholic beers full of flavor, well-crafted, and just like full-strength beer. They brew over 50 styles of craft non-alcoholic beer, including IPAs, golden sours, and more. You can find Athletic Brewing Company's non-alcoholic brews at a store near you, or you can buy online at athleticbrewing.com. First-time customers use promo code LOCKEDON to get 15% off your first online order. That's promo code LOCKEDON at checkout for 15% off at athleticbrewing.com. Near beer, exclusions apply and conditions apply. Athletic Brewing Company, fit for all times. And let's go triple box here and welcome in Zane Brancefield to the show. And Zane, it's good to have you back on. We did an instant recap for the game today, and I was very, very impressed with the way that Penn State performed. Of course, there's no doubt about it, because 63-7, it's a good day in general. But let's focus on Penn State quarterback Drew Aller here in this case. Zane, we'll start with you. Drew Aller was efficient, okay? 22 of 26 to go along with his 21 of 29 performance against West Virginia. Doesn't turn the ball over, doesn't even put it really in harm's way against Delaware's defense. Delaware doing a good job of limiting the explosive plays. But what did you ultimately see from Drew in today's contest?
The biggest thing I take away is that Drew just kind of sits back in the pocket and he's like super comfortable. And like, obviously the Penn State offensive line is incredible, but the couple times that like guys would slip off the outside and get inside to him, he didn't really care at all. He just kind of sat in there and trusted his guys and just made a perfect throw every time because he's Drew Aller. And honestly, he just did a good job. He just stayed calm. He stayed confident. He stuck with what he knew. He didn't try to just force the ball. He didn't just launch the ball down the field like 60 yards. He just went simple. He went easy, just 10, 20-yard plays, and just took it one play at a time. He wasn't looking too far ahead like, oh, no, we're only at the 10-yard line. What are we going to do? He was like just taking it one step at a time, getting each first down and working his way down the field.
Yeah, and that's a veteran quarterback, is the fact that I like the way that Drew Aller has gone through his progressions, okay? First read's not there, and most quarterbacks just force that throw because that's essentially what they're told to do. But Drew Aller processes the game like a pro quarterback, like a veteran in college. Okay, at the very least, a senior quarterback at college football, to say, hey, Keandre Lambert-Smith's not there. He's my first read. And he doesn't stare him down. He takes a quick check, not there. I like the way that he processes the game quickly, because most people will latch on to that first read. They'll stare at it and then finally make a decision. And then that's when they're getting hit. That's when a turnover comes and Drew's like, not there. Second read, quick, not there. Third read, it's there, and then it's delivered with accuracy. I think about the play where he completed one to Dante Cephas, and first play wasn't there. Delaware was all over it. They read the play design. And then the second read wasn't there on the left side. And then he rolls out to buy himself some time, and then throwing on the run across his body slightly, delivers it to Dante Cephas, Marty, and it's just very refreshing to have that kind of play. It's not to say that Sean Clifford was completely inaccurate and didn't know how to throw a football here, but that came, you don't have to, there wasn't that, oh man, he's going to totally miss this target. It is dead on to where he is aiming for a lot of the time so far.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, it goes back to Drew. Drew has the ability to make a lot of throws, and a lot of guys just don't. You know,
they don't want to, and they can't make.
Yeah, they don't want to attempt it. You're right. They don't want to attempt it because they can't make it. We saw it last week. We saw it today. Watching him step up in the pocket and go through his progressions and fire the ball to a receiver is just so refreshing. And that's not a knock on Sean Clifford. You know, I think Sean Clifford was a much better quarterback than a lot of Penn State fans, at times, myself included, give him credit for. But physically, he was limited in ways that Drew Aller isn't. there are throws Drew Aller can make that Sean Clifford simply could not make, and we see that now. So it's exciting. It's something that gives you confidence for moving forward. But yeah, you just hope it continues, because if you're a Penn State fan, you look at Drew Aller, you look at this offense, and you should be excited. Through 2 games at hang 63 on Delaware, you put up 38, which should have been more, without drops and missed kicks against West Virginia. So this is a good team. They're a good team. They're a good offense, led by the quarterback. Dante Cephas, you mentioned, if he can clean up the drops, which he did today on limited targets, you feel really good about wide receiver. This offense has basically a limitless potential, and the only thing that's going to hold the offense back is going to be themselves. But yeah, it's there. It's there for the taking. You just hope you continue to see Drew step up, make these throws, make these plays, and yeah, it's again. I know I said earlier in the show, but it's an exciting time to be a fan of Penn State football, because this offense can be really, really freaking good this season.
Final thought on Penn State Delaware, and it's about Bo Pribula and some of the young guys getting in the game. Vital experience. Before we talk about that, let's hear from our other sponsor of today's episode, and that is going to be FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So FanDuel is treating new customers to a special offer right now to get ready for the NFL season, and that is when you bet $5, you get 200 in bonus bets guaranteed. And plus, all customers who do bet that $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday ticket. I mean, for YouTube and YouTube television. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy, super easy to use, and you can bet everything from spreads, money line, total, player props, you name it, all of that. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with an offer you won't want to miss. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. And right back to it as we pick up our conversation with Marty and Zane on Penn State versus Delaware, 63-7 the final, and a lot of guys got in the game today, and it was no surprise. Some of them earlier than anticipated, right? I thought seeing King Mack come in on very, very crucial downs to cover the slot what was one. Now Tony Rojas and other guys came in later in the game. I noticed that Javen Williams was in there, Andrew Raplia, Bo Pribula played much earlier than I thought he would. I thought that they wanted to say what Penn State told me by pulling Drew Aller in the middle of the third quarter on the earlier side was that they don't need to see any more of him. They believe in what he can do. He doesn't have to prove anything to them, that he is the real deal. And that's saying a lot, Zane, Marty, is that they have full confidence, because it was different when you had a 6-year senior in Sean Clifford to say, all right, we've seen it all. We know what you can do. We don't really need you to build chemistry with this offense. And then they said, no, we need Bo Pribula to get these reps. We still want to see what he can do. So, Marty, I'm surprised that Bo came in as early as he did. I thought that would have been the first possession of the fourth quarter, but it tells me how much they believe in Drew Aller more than it does, oh, we want to see what Bo can do.
Yeah, I agree. I thought Drew would get one more possession than he did on offense, mainly due to how the game was going. But I was glad they didn't. It's a in today's world, it's a tough slope to handle.
Yeah.
You look at Bo Pribula. He's really good. I know Drew gets all the spotlight and everything, rightfully so. Take nothing away from Bo Pribula. Bo Pribula is a really damn good quarterback. Bo Pribula would start for a lot of Power 5 teams at quarterback right now. Yeah. So you want to keep Bo happy, but at the same time, you also realize, hey, this is a kid from Central York. He grew up an hour and a half from Happy Valley. He's been a Penn State fan his entire life. The odds of him transferring are a lot lower than most kids, but you still want to give him his reps and keep him happy. And I think that's part of where Penn State was at. And also to go back to something I mentioned earlier, the coaching staff is kind of learning past mistakes. I don't think that everyone would be in a position again like they were a few years ago in Iowa, where Taquan Robertson literally could not get a snap off. You know, you want to give your backup quarterback plenty of reps. So I would have given Lar one more series, but I've got no problem with it. Give Bo the reps. I thought he played really well, and yeah, I think this is as someone who's been a Penn State fan for a long time. This is the best shape the quarterback room has been in a long time. You know, I go back through my life with, Trace McSorley and Christian Hackenberg and Michael Robinson, Anthony Morelli, and just, God, it was one waste storm after another. I think this is the best spot this quarterback room has been in a long time. And it's nice to see, but I think that's where we're at right now, because I think Bo had earned these reps today and played really dang well. And just, if you're Penn State, you want to see him continue to get these opportunities and play well.
See,
Zane,
I actually disagree with that.
Okay, all right. Hey, chime in here.
So I actually thought Bo Pribula should have gone in the game earlier. I thought that Drew would have only played the first half and Bo would have come in right at the beginning of the third quarter. And the reason for that is because Bo has done a lot of really good things at practice when we've gone to watch him, and just seeing him like play different reps in different situations, especially at the open practice when the team was scrimmaging. Mm-hmm. He was running a lot with the first team and he was getting a lot of good looks. And plus, like Franklin says all the time, like Bo Pribula is like a big Trace McSorley. He's runs exactly the same way. He's the same style quarterback where Aller likes to sit in the pocket. And I just figured that Penn State had seen like Drew Aller. They knew he could throw 325 yards like he did against West Virginia. Yeah. They know what he can do. They know he's poised and he's calm in the pocket. So I just figured they would put Pribula in there, give Delaware a different look, and not give away all their secrets, and let everybody else know how good Drew Aller is, and let Pribula get seasoned, let him become like a good solid backup quarterback. Because like Marty said, you don't want that same situation where you got to put a quarterback in the game. Like if something does happen to Drew and then we have nobody put in the game and then Penn State ends up losing, especially if it's a big time opponent like Ohio State or Michigan.
Yeah, and I think they're going to rotate Bo Pribula in general, not to put Drew Aller on the bench, but because they can do things with an athletic. The offense looks completely different, okay? It's more of a read option where it's more of now it's RPO across the board. Fans might not believe this looking at it at first, just because Drew Aller is your 6'5", 242 prototypical NFL style quarterback. But what he does is RPO. Okay. It's an RPO style offense. His first read isn't going to be to tuck it and run for 7-8 yards on 1st and 10. It's going to be the quick slant or the quick out or the handoff. Okay. But it's still an RPO. Same thing goes for Bo Pribula, except he's going to be more inclined to run it himself as part of that run pass option. Okay. Whereas Drew's is more of the run pass option in this case, but it's all RPO across the board for Penn State's offense. Zane, the question, I'm glad you brought up that point about Drew, but the question that I wanted to get your guys' reaction to kind of conclude this first part of our live show, and then we'll flip it over to Penn State and Illinois. And I am salivating at this matchup here, but for the rotational guys, the guys that either were starting for the first time, Vanga Ioane, for example, or freshmen that saw some serious reps, King Mack, Tony Rojas, which any one of those guys took the biggest step forward, impressed you guys the most? I'll start, and it is Vanga Ioane. I think he took the biggest step forward because now I saw him at both the left guard and the right guard position. He started today as opposed to JB Nelson. I was like, oh man, Nelson might be hurt, but Nelson did come into the game later on. You saw him run with the ones next to Olu Fashanu, where there's some things where I said, okay, Ioane has some things to work on himself. But as far as taking a step forward, he took that through all 350, 60 pounds step forward for him, a gigantic leap for the second year player And I just grow all the more confident in that offensive line. Javen Williams, I know it was in the fourth quarter, but logged some really good reps at the left tackle spot, protecting Bo. So I like where the offense, and we talked about running backs to start with this and how they've come a long way from 2020 to now 2023. How about the freaking offensive line? Okay. That your third string depth is pretty good. Okay. It's not going to start. It's not going to get you all the wins in the Big Ten, but the fact that you can trust them if they need to come in a spot situation. Marty, who made the biggest step forward? Who made a lot of progress in today's game against Delaware from on the second string, or maybe it was even a starter? Who took a big step forward for you?
Well, the first thing I would say is, as a former high school offensive lineman, and this is something I talk about a lot on the podcast with Dylan and Anthony on Happy Valley Insider, is just I'm a sucker for offensive linemen who come out and punch you in the mouth and want to maul you, because that's I love it. I love it, man. As someone who's that player once, I love it. But for guys who impressed me, I'm going to start in the line to go defensive. Jamal Lyons.
Big hit.
Yeah,
big hit from Lyons.
I said on our pregame podcast for this game that I could see Lyons being one of those guys who, in garbage time, makes some plays. And you're like, hey, I'm gonna remember that name for a year or two down the road. He was explosive. He was violent. He was physical. Give me Jamal Lyons. And if Mean Vanover continues to have his injury issues, I'm not going to be stunned if we see a scenario where Jamil Lyons plays his way into being green shirted this year and getting those 4 games, not getting red shirted, but we'll see what happens. I think Lyons is a really, really good football player. I think he's going to be a really good football player for Penn State. We saw that today. He was just explosive. He was violent. He was physical, and that's what you want to see from a defensive lineman, man. Because if you can't do that in defensive line, you're not going to be successful. And Lyons did all of that and then some.
Zane?
I was very impressed with King Mack, where I'm like a sucker for a guy that can break through that D line or the offensive line and get into the quarterback, and having 2 tackles on a QB hit is like, I like to see that. I like to see guys going after the quarterback and wanting to put that pressure on him to force a tough throw or even trying to get a sack. And I just thought he looked really polished. And for a first-year guy, don't think you could really tell, because he looked pretty good. He was running with some of the other guys, and I'm sure he's learned a lot just from being out there today, getting a lot of reps, playing alongside other guys who have been around the game, even at practice, like Keaton Ellis, who can teach him some things. So I was very impressed with him, and I think he's going to be an important piece for Penn State for the next few years.
All right, so that's it. I don't want to talk about Delaware anymore. That's gonna conclude part 1 of this live post game show. Let's move right into part 2 here. Penn State versus Illinois. Illinois. Penn State opens up as an 11.5 point favorite. They've moved to 12.5. I think you're a fool if you don't take Penn State and the points in this game. They are going to absolutely slaughter Illinois from what I've seen in the first 2 games from the Fighting Illini and the Nittany Lions. Let's talk about it as the live post-game show continues on.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And yes, thanks for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every single day. I'm Zach Seyko, your host, joined by special guest Marty Leap of Penn State Rivals and Zane Brancefield, helping as a contributor on the podcast here, and a 3-person panel. We're looking for your comments as well. We'll take any and all of them. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. And right now, new customers can bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. Okay, now it's Penn State, Illinois. If you have any more thoughts, and we do have a comment, so I appreciate that. We're going to bring it up here. And Peter says, I'm sorry, but Tyler Elsdon is a liability that needs to be addressed. Peter, thanks for the comment, getting our conversation started. So, all right, not quite. Well, I guess this goes into the conversation about Illinois, because should Tyler Elsdon play as many snaps in the next game and then games to come? That was my thought has always been is that Kobe King has been the better of the two Mike linebackers. I really didn't think it was a competition going into the offseason. James Franklin framed it that way, but I had no doubt that Kobe King was going to win the competition. Now that he knows how to command the defense a little better. Okay. The question wasn't who was the better football player. Kobe King is the much better athlete, far and above. We see that, but yes, Tyler Elsdon was better at understanding the X and O's of the defense and the game of football itself and understanding the playbook. And you have to, as the Mike linebacker, you are calling the defense. Okay. You are the quarterback of the defense. And to say, hey, redshirt freshman Kobe King, you have 1 year of eligibility behind Tyler Elsdon. We need you to do that right away. He progressively came on. You saw the athleticism throughout the season. And now you have that second level of Abdul Carter, Curtis Jacobs, and Kobe King, when all three of them are on the field at the same time, like just good luck trying to get past them. I really haven't seen it, but what I have seen is Delaware FCS running backs burst through the hole where Tyler Elsdon looked a little confused on that play. He hesitated. Okay. He hesitated. Kobe King has the athleticism to make up for that kind of gaffe. Tyler Elsdon does not. Does this hurt his playing time moving forward? Do you bench him? Okay. Do you take his snaps away going into Illinois? Zane?
I don't think you do, because Tyler Elsdon, like, if you go, like, it's more than just like what he does as a football player, and it's also about his leadership capabilities. Now, I'm not saying you split the snaps like 50-50, but I think Kobe plays more, but I think you still let Elsdon in there, like maybe like every four plays or so, just like because he has that leadership, he has that experience, and he's a pretty vocal guy. Not that Kobe's not, but it's something that Penn State has to consider when they're figuring out who to play and who not to play. And it's those intangible things that people often forget about that you have to really consider when you're making a starting lineup. It's not just, oh, who do I like for Franklin? He's got to think about it more and like how they can actually win with communication and leadership and whatever else he thinks is necessary to win the ball game.
Marty, jump in here. Do you even move Tyler Elsdon a little bit down on the depth chart? Do you consider a Keon Wiley getting some extra snaps, someone who's more athletic and he's probably in the same situation as a Kobe King where freak athlete, but yes, Tyler Elsdon has the smarter brain at this point just because Wiley doesn't have as much experience here. So do you consider even bumping Elsdon down on the depth chart in that regard to third string?
Yeah, at this point, I have solely as a fan, I have no interest in seeing Tyler Elsdon on the field. That touchdown run today by Delaware was completely on him, and this comes from a guy who coaches junior high and youth football. You teach your linebackers the first thing you do is you fill that hole, head up, make the tackle, and he couldn't handle any of that. Yeah, I'm not an Elsdon guy. I don't think Elsdon's the answer. At this point, I want to see Kobe King and Mike. And when Kobe King's on the field, like you said, I want to see Keon Wiley. I don't think Elsdon brings anything to this team. And this is not a slight on the kid or whatever, but the only reason he ever got a scholarship in the first place was due to Derek Wingo flipping from Penn State to Florida. If Derek Wingo never flips his commitment, Tyler Elsdon never gets offered a scholarship from Penn State in the first place.
Whoa.
I know that's way back machine, but just, yeah, he's not, the football IQ I would give you, but from a physical and just athleticism standpoint, he's not cut out to play linebacker at this level. And just, yeah, that was so bad today. So bad. I'm not interested in watching him. Just give me Kobe King, give me Keon Wiley, and we'll figure it out from there.
I mean, you definitely need depth. It can't be just Kobe King. I also say consider Tony Rojas at the Mike linebacker spot. Maybe slide Curtis Jacobs over, and because it's like, and then, I mean, Dom DeLuca was also in on that play. I mean, that play was just kind of a cluster to begin with. There was a stunt on the strong side, and Delaware, the tight end, blocked down, trapped the defensive end and the stunting defensive tackle on the inside. I can't remember who they were, but everyone just got jumbled together on the right side. And then Delaware ran either a left side inside counter. I thought a left side inside zone, or it frankly was a counter because it went away from the block. And then that is Elsden's responsibility. I saw there were comments of, well, the defensive tackle should have blown that up. Not the way that it was a slant stunt. And Delaware called the perfect scheme for it. And that's where Tyler Elsden should have filled. And that should have been a 5, maybe a 6-yard game, and at least trip him up. I mean, he just ran right by you. But I think you do have to weigh your options, because at that point in time, remember last season, Penn State made a huge switch with the Michigan game because Tyler Elsden and Curtis Jacobs on that day. I don't like to criticize Curtis Jacobs because I think he's going to be, he's shown that he had 10 tackles against West Virginia, the great run he had down the stretch of last season, and he's going to be probably one of the first 5 linebackers selected in next year's NFL draft. But he had a bad game against Michigan. Elsden isn't fully to blame for that game itself, but that is when Penn State made the change. They said, all right, we're going to move Curtis Jacobs back over to the Sam. We're going to bring Abdul Carter in as the off-ball linebacker, and they really shifted some things around. I think you have to deja vu all over again, where Delaware is breaking off those kinds of runs now. You have to make a change going into Illinois, who's going to make you pay for that more than once, right? That's how we can pivot into this Illinois conversation, because I get it. Illinois is not what I thought it was going to be going into this season. I thought getting Luke Altmaier into the fold would make this team a lot more competitive, but it was the defense that propped them up. But still, because Brett Bielema is a run-first coach, he probably has a game plan. I've seen a lot more spread from them than I anticipated, but I guarantee you he's going to try to go jumbo, 3 tight ends against Penn State under center, despite what Luke Altmaier brings here, because you gotta figure that out. You can't have what happened against Delaware today with Tyler Elsden going into Illinois, who will make you pay for that more than once, twice, 3 times. They'll make it an issue for you.
Yeah, Illinois will make an issue. And this one thing I was saying about Illinois, I'm with you. They're not the team I thought they would be preseason.
No, not at all.
I'm not. Before last weekend, had you asked me, I've been pretty worried about Illinois. Now I'm not. I still think Penn State. I think it began to start slow and they weren't going away. But regardless, it's a Brett Bielema team. What is Brett Bielema going to do? He's going to run the ball. You know. So you've got to get that cleaned up. But, I think this is an opportunity for Penn State to come out, go on the road. We'll see how it goes. I don't expect it to be easy, because if nothing else, you're talking about Drew Lars, first ever start on the road, 11 a.m. kick. I know Illinois' defense has been bad so far.
Bad. They've been bad.
Real bad, yeah. But it's still a defensive front 7 that's pretty freaking talented, man. So I don't understand why they've been bad, but I think Penn State will be okay. They've got to come out and just play. It's not a show up and win kind of game, but I'll be curious to see what happens. I think this is a game Penn State probably wins by like 14 or so points. Probably one of those games that you never really feel like it's in doubt, but it's always kind of ugly. But we'll see where it goes. But the fact that Illinois, I mean, honestly, Illinois should be 0-2. They got beat by Kansas in a game that's not as close to the final score. They should have lost at Toledo. This just is not a good football team, so we'll see where it goes. But, I think this is one where Penn State will be challenged, but ultimately they should walk away with the victory and should be 3-0 when Iowa comes down for the whiteout.
And we'll break down Illinois Penn State a little further. I want to hear from our sponsor of today's episode, and that is Athletic Brewing Company. They've changed the name of non-alcoholic beer. And because of that, we have our game changer. And I already nominated Dom DeLuca earlier in the live post-game show, but now I'm going to let's throw Keaton Ellis into the fold as well. Captain Keaton Ellis forcing a fumble, part of the 2 turnovers that Penn State was able to have against Delaware. So Keaton Ellis is your game changer of the week, brought to you by Athletic Brewing Company to go along with Dom DeLuca. So like Keaton Ellis and Dom DeLuca changing the game, Athletic Brewing Company has completely changed the non-alcoholic beer game. They make non-alcoholic beers that actually taste good, full of flavor, well-crafted, just like a full-strength beer. They brew over 50 styles of craft non-alcoholic beers, including IPAs, Goldens, sours, and much more. You can find Athletic Brewing Company's non-alcoholic brews at a store near you or buy online at athleticbrewing.com. First-time customers use promo code LOCKEDON. Get 15% off your first online order. That is code LOCKEDON at checkout for 15% off at athleticbrewing.com. Near beer exclusions and conditions apply. Athletic Brewing Company, fit for all times. And I want to thank everyone so much for tuning in for this live edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. And Locked On Podcast Network goes live every Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. with Locked On College Football Kickoff live every Friday on every single Locked On College YouTube channel, so including Locked On Nittany Lions, where you get the latest analysis around college football playoff implications, all that and more with the hosts that Locked On is able to bring you with the talent, the insights, all of it. That is Locked On College Football Kickoff live every Friday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time on every single Locked On College YouTube channel, including Locked On Nittany Lions. Back into Penn State and Illinois with Marty Leap and Zane Brancefield. I'm Zach Seyko on this live post-game show. We're looking for your comments too. You still have a chance to get your questions, your comments in. If you still have a last second thought about Delaware, if you want to trash talk Illinois with us, because I thought Penn State was going to be a 17, maybe an 18-point favorite. I still get it. They're on the road. So that is where I understand Vegas is thinking of an 11 and 12-point favorite, but I still think that's not enough. Okay. I watched that Illinois, and I get it. You know, you don't want to have too much recency bias here, but that Illinois-Kansas game was not pretty. Okay. Kansas did have some lucky plays, a lot of tipped interceptions and everything that they shouldn't have come up with, but it's the way that it's not so much about Illinois' offense. It's the defense, because that was the base of everything they did last year, because defense controlled the pace of the game. You were able to lull your opponent to sleep with the ground game that they had. They lost their top running back from a year ago. They lost Ryan Walters, their defensive coordinator, who's now the head coach at Purdue. And basically the only one on defense. Now, Marty, I get it. I agree with you from a neutral college football standpoint that Illinois is still talented in its front seven. But honestly, the only name that most people are going to know on that defensive unit is Jerzon Newton. Okay. He's a game wrecker. I'll give you that. But Penn State could get away with triple teaming him 9 out of 10 plays every single drive and be very successful. I'm thinking that Penn State is going to get at least 5 touchdowns against this Illinois. The way that you bring back Jalen Daniels, right? Kansas, I hope college football fans, I hope Nittany Lion fans know what I'm talking about. Jalen Daniels is electrifying at quarterback. He comes back from injury from the first time in the middle of the season of last year and has the game that he does against Illinois. First time back playing live college football snaps. And Kansas puts up 34 points, no problem, against them. Illinois is constantly playing from behind. I think the deficit at one point was 31-7 between the Jayhawks and Fighting Illini. This defense, Penn State will be a red hot knife through butter when they go into Champaign. So I'm thinking that Penn State can easily get 35, 42. And I see shades of Penn State versus Auburn 2022 again, where they are underestimating actually how good this Penn State football team is. They're not some fringe top 10 team like they were a year ago. They win the Rose Bowl. They beat a Utah team that loses this quarterback. No, Penn State is in the college football playoff conversation. So that's them jumping up to another tier. And Illinois took 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I would say a dozen steps backwards as far as how competitive they are. Zane, jump in here. Your thoughts on Illinois after a near scare, almost losing to a MAC team in Toledo in week 1. They should have lost that game. Toledo's good. I'll give Toledo credit. Credit where it's due. Toledo is good, but they should have lost to that Toledo team. And then you were blown out by Kansas. I don't care that the score said 34-23.
Like you said, the Illinois defense just isn't going to be good enough for Penn State's offense.
No,
you have a guy like Drew Aller and our dynamic duo of Nick and Katron. It's just not going to be able, they're not going to be able to do anything. When you let Toledo score 28 or Kansas get 34 points, that's insane. Penn State's going to score another 60 points on them if that's the case. And even their offense isn't that great when they've played 2 games and already had 3 interceptions. I don't care how you get the interceptions. It's an interception. You should, that's going to happen. The only thing they have going for them is Altwater, his name,
Altmaier. Yep.
Yeah. Luke Altmaier he's going to run the football, and Penn State's defense is just going to lock him up. They're going to plug the holes. They're going to tackle him on the outside. We saw how fast Zane Durant could be today when he chased down for that incredible tackle for only a 2-yard gain. It's going to happen again. And Penn State is just that much faster. They're stronger. They're bigger. And I really don't think Illinois is going to have any chance. And 11, 12 point favor, that's crazy. I think Penn State wins by at least 21.
All right, Marty, add on to that because you've watched Illinois over Toledo and now Kansas. What is the toughest part about this defense? Because I watched Kansas absolutely maul them offensively. The ground game from that. I want to pull up those stats for everybody, because it was the way that Kansas was able to run the football against a Jerzon Newton and that front 7, as you mentioned. I mean, their leading rusher was averaging 12 yards per carry. Their second leading rusher was averaging 8.2 yards per carry. Collectively, 44 carries, 262 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And Jalen Daniels didn't run, and now he had 11 carries for 24 yards. Some of those include sacks, because remember, they docked the rushing total in college football, so that number's a little deflated in this case. But does Illinois do anything right defensively since they've lost Ryan Walters and all those? They lost a lot of guys in the secondary that were huge for them last year. What do they do right at this point?
Yeah, I think that Illinois, again, it's a team that is way underperforming what I expected from them. But at the same time, the talent is there. They are more talented than they performed. So we'll see how it goes Saturday. Again, I think Penn State will win. I think the way Illinois has started has a lot of fans thinking it's going to be more of a blowout than it will be. But, I think Penn State pulls it off. I think they, again, it's one of those games where I think they kind of hem around early, because Illinois' defense, ultimately, that front 7 is still really good. They're very talented, regardless of how they've played. I think that can give Penn State some problems. But, I think ultimately the other champion, the victory, they're going to be 3-0. They're going to 1-0 Big Ten play, and all sights will be set forward to Iowa in the Whiteout game.
So you're looking even beyond this one. James Franklin does not pass up an opportunity to stick it to somebody, right? Minnesota last year in the whiteout game, Auburn, West Virginia this time around, Maryland every single time. I know Penn State is unrivaled, but in the back of James Franklin's mind, these guys, he likes to put the pedal to the metal. So I know that 2021 9 overtime Illinois versus Penn State is floating around. It's buzzing around in his head. There's still players from that team, Curtis Jacobs, Keaton Ellis, just to name a couple of them, that remember the game very well. But for Drew Aller, doesn't know that feeling. Bo Prabula obviously doesn't know that feeling. Nicholas Singleton, Katron Allen, Dante Cephas. Let's include some of the transfers, right? Johnny Dixon doesn't know that feeling. Okay. These guys, there's combinations, there's elements of this team that are still brand new to what that 9 overtime game felt like. But still the consistent is, okay, relate that back to the Minnesota game that Penn State played in the whiteout last year. Not a lot of people other than Sean Clifford, Theo Johnson, right, knows about that game because he's been around for a while too. Not a lot of people remember the 2019 Minnesota game simply because not a lot of them were left on the roster in 2022. Not enough of them anyway. But they stuck that game pretty personally. And then in this case, here we are again, just 2 years later, and you get the chance to do it on their field, right? You get to go up to Illinois and stick it to them. Kind of, that's why I relate this more to Penn State versus Auburn just last year. Week 3, okay, Penn State's good, but how good are they, right? I feel like the national conversation about Penn State isn't where it should be. People still look at Penn State as, okay, yeah, they're top 10, but they're going to lose to Michigan. They're going to lose to Ohio State, right? That's the conversation by the general public. And I feel like this is one of Penn State's first opportunities to use Illinois, inferior as they are, as a sticking point to say, hey, we're here. We're in the college football playoff conversation, whether you like it or not, and we're better than the credit you're giving us to this point. Marty, would you agree?
Yeah, I think this is a team that, especially with the biggest thing to me is what we've seen from Drew the first 2 weeks. They're very capable of getting to the playoff, making a run, being a dangerous team. And I don't think it's that the national media doesn't talk about it at all, but I think, and understandably so, a lot of the national guys in the will believe when we see when they beat Ohio State, when they beat Michigan, which I get because what is it? James Franklin's 4-14 against the 2 schools, whatever it is. But I think I know I have said all along, if it's ever going to be the year for Penn State, I feel like this is the year.
This is the year. Oh yeah.
Because I understand next year Drew's back, Singleton is back, Allen's back, but
you lose a lot next year.
Yeah, with your offensive line and your defense, you lose a lot. So if there's ever going to be a year they're gonna make a run, it's this year. And again, through 2 games, I feel like they've lived up to that. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I just this is a really, really freaking good football team, man, and it's exciting. I think this is their best team since at least 2017, and just. Hey, let's see what happens. The pieces are there. The pieces are there to make a run at the national championship. Let's see what happens.
I appreciate your guys' help on the live post-game show. We're going to wrap it up here in just a second. Let's hear again from our sponsor of today's episode, and that is FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers, to get ready for the NFL season, you have the opportunity to bet just $5 and you get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet that $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. So how about that deal, right? You get a combined $300 in credits here, folks. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. I can say that again. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use. You can bet on everything from spreads, player props, money line totals, you name it. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with an offer you don't want to miss. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. And Locked On Nittany Lions is your go-to podcast for Penn State rivals. Marty Leap helping us over from Penn State rivals, HappyValleyInsider.com. Zane and I help contribute our analysis to it as well. I want to throw it back out there, 63-7. I had it on the podcast. I had it and I just hit Sean Clifford here over to the side, my autographed Sean Clifford card. I had it and getting excited about that. 63-7 against Delaware. So I got to put my brain to the test here for how bad I think Penn State's going to try to stick it to Illinois, because I think there's going to be elements of the ground and pound. Brett Bielema was looking past both Kansas and Toledo. Those games just did not matter to him as much as James Franklin and Penn State do. Okay. So there's going to be elements that he's saving that's under center. That's going to be the 9 offensive linemen, whatever have you, but you don't have the same running attack. You don't have the same talent, period. Luke Altmaier is a much better quarterback, but now that we've seen that they've changed the offense to fit him a little bit. Penn State's defense is designed to stop the spread attack. It is not, it's better designed. It's better equipped to go up against Michigan, your vintage Brett Bielema, Wisconsin, Illinois, whatever. It's not about Illinois. It's about Brett Bielema and the offense that he traditionally likes to run. Okay. Penn State's defense is better equipped to handle those kinds of teams, but they're designed as a program to go up against Ohio State, Maryland. Okay. Not necessarily Michigan, but if you look at what Illinois runs this year, because they have Luke Altmaier, they changed some pieces around offensively. They're running more 3 and 4 wide receiver sets. They're not going 12 personnel. They're not going 7, 8, 9 offensive linemen to the point where you think you have more than 12, 13 guys on the field with how many big bodies they have. Okay. Illinois offensively has changed. Luke Altmaier is good, but he doesn't have the weapons around him to. I like the way he's played. I think he is actually hampered by the lack of talent that he has around him at Illinois, and then the defense being a shell of itself, losing Walters, losing top 5 draft picks in the NFL, in the secondary, and Penn State with the revenge factor is going to stick it to them. I am thinking week 3 all over again. 1 year ago to this point, they wore all white and they went into Auburn and they kicked the Tigers right out of their own stadium. They're going to do the exact same thing to the Fighting Illini. Deja vu all over again. This time you just get to do it against a Big Ten opponent.
Yeah, I think you'll see something similar. Like I've said at the show, I think you can see a scenario Penn State starts a little slow, pulls away, wins big, which is the Auburn game last year too.
Mm-hmm.
That's how that game went. They started slow, pulled away, won it big. If I had to make a prediction right now, I would say Penn State wins it. Oh, man, I don't know, 34-13, 34-14, okay, something like that. But, yeah, I'm with you. I think they'll come out, maybe start a little slow because I think Illinois will be hyped up being at home and everything. But
in
the end, the talent difference, the talent gap takes over, and Penn State wins it. I will say give me 35-13 is my early – week out prediction. I'll say Penn State wins 35-13.
Penn State wins this game guaranteed. It's just a matter of how much. Even if Illinois might make it a little closer, they add some more wrinkles that Penn State's not expecting. I can guarantee you right now on this live show, and I'll do it throughout the entire week leading up to it, that they win this game no matter what, whether it's
something has to go very sideways for them not to at this point.
They win the game.
Yeah, something has to go really sideways for them not to win it.
All right, Zane, your perspective on this. Does Illinois put up a fight? You said that it's at least 2 touchdowns, which is what the spread is. It's 11, starting to shift into that 12. I could see this going all the way to 13.5. I think 14 is the cutoff because if we're looking at this from a strict Vegas betting perspective, the quote unquote sharps are going to have a hard time taking a Penn State team that frankly is unproven in the college football playoff territory, right? They're proven as a good, great team, but then there's that conversation about elite, and Penn State still technically unproven in that elite category. So I feel like at this point in time, Vegas is not going to give them over 14 points because it's still a road game. And Brett Bielema just has the advantage over James Franklin historically, but this is not historically. This is this season. So does Illinois offer any sort of fight in this game?
I think Illinois tries to fight. I don't think they'll be able to fight. Like I said, I think Penn State wins by at least like 21 points, and whatever the spread is or not, if it's less than that, I think you should just bet the over because Penn State's going to come out swinging. Like you said, Franklin, whether he tells people or not, he remembers that 9
It's personal.
Game.
It's personal.
And he doesn't care what the media says. If they say, oh, you guys ran up the score. No, he doesn't care. He just wants to go in there and slap it in their face.
He wants to do that.
That's what he wants to do. And plus, this is probably one of the best teams he's had since being the head coach. Maybe the only team better is that 16 or 17 team.
Yeah.
But I think Penn State goes in there. I think they run them in the house. You guys say maybe Penn State starts slow, but I think the only reason Penn State would start slow is if maybe they have some jitters. If like Drew Aller's like, oh, this is my first start at a Big Ten game.
On the road.
I think that's the only thing that can throw Penn State off, because Nick and Katron are used to playing away at like Big Ten games that really matter. And I don't think this one is like super important, but just that point where we got a couple guys that are still figuring it out. But I think Penn State will take it by storm. And like I said, I think they win by at least 21 points. And I think Illinois is going to be kind of thinking themselves like, why did we run our mouths? Because I think they're going to get smacked in the face.
I mean, I don't even know that Illinois is running its mouth per se, right? The circumstances are so much different. In Penn State, if it had a semblance of a running game in 2021, they would have won that game. Okay. Penn State was so much better than that Illinois team. You were coming off the high of losing, right? You were coming way down. Not only did you come down from the high of that Penn State, Iowa 3-4, whatever the rankings were, 4-5 in 2021, you were winning. You ended up losing that game because your quarterback couldn't snap the football, and you had 7 false starts or whatever because you couldn't even get the cadence right. Losing that game by 3 points when you know you should have won. Sean Clifford, before he got hurt, they were up by 2 touchdowns. It was 17-3, mind you. And then you have to come home to a team that was limping in. They were 3-5, 3-6, and Illinois just played ugly football. That was a recipe for disaster. Now you're coming in where the talent gap is significantly different. You're motivated from that 2021 game, and you're riding on a win streak. Okay, going all the way back into last season where you have a bulk of the foundation of the team. This isn't a different team from 2022. This is the exact same team. And now you're on a good win. You haven't lost a game since Ohio State. Okay, you're coming off the Rose Bowl win, the way you finished the regular season, and now stringing together West Virginia, Delaware. Illinois better get out of the way for the train that's coming. Like I said, I think they're going to stick it to them. If I had to go an early score prediction, I'm thinking 42, 45, 17. Illinois might get some garbage points late in the game. Luke Altmaier can run wild. He's a dual threat quarterback. Maybe they get into the 20s, but I'm thinking right now 42-17 Penn State. Zane, Marty threw out his score prediction, 35-13. It was. Zane, what's your score right now at this point?
I'd probably say somewhere around like 35-7. I think Penn State just comes out, and I wouldn't say like we get a lot more points than that, just because I think Drew's going to be a little bit nervous, even though he's always pretty calm. But I think that's just going to be something Penn State's like, oh, we're in a Big Ten game. I think that's the only reason we don't score more points. And like you said, I think Illinois just picks up like a touchdown somewhere in the game off of maybe another kind of miscommunication like today.
Yeah. Oh, that's going to do it for the live post-game show. Hope to do more of this. We're looking for more questions and comments in the future. That's okay if you didn't get the chance to get one in here. But Marty Leap of Penn State Rivals, HappyValleyInsider.com, Zane Brancefield helping me out on this show, Locked On Nittany Lions. Become an everydayer. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Wherever you give your podcast, leave a review, leave comments, what you want to see talked about, what you want to see added to the show, improved about the show. I'm all for it. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me on this live podcast, and hopefully I can have you guys both. Zane, I know I'll be having you back on the show. Marty, I hope I can have you back on the show in the near future.
Thank you, Zach.
Very well. Yeah, anytime. I'm here. Ready to go. I got you.
Appreciate you, Marty. Appreciate all of you tuning in for this live Locked On Nittany Lions.